Ciao everyone and welcome back to Growth Talks. I'm your host Raffaele Gaito and my super guest today is Guk Kim. How are you, man?
All good, all good. Thanks for having me here, Raffaele.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure having you today here. We know each other for a while now, and I really wanted to do an episode with you because I'd love to have some feedback and experience and suggestions when talking about growth in a big environment, in a big corporate, in a big company. But let's start from the beginning. So we usually start these conversations on this podcast just with a classic one, with a simple one. So let's talk a little bit about yourself. What's your story?
Perfect, thanks. So, I mean, so my name is Guk. I don't look like one, but actually I'm from Italy. I'm Italian, I would say, because I've been living in Italy since I was 5 years old. Originally, I'm from Korea, but given the fact that I've lived most of my life here in Italy, I consider myself Italian and so on. I mean, I still like Korean food and all that stuff, but I still consider myself Italian. Whenever I go to Asia, I'm like, okay, where's my home? My home is in Italy and so on, right? My career in the industry is slightly different or slightly inverse from the many of the people. So rather than starting the corporate life since the beginning after university, I actually opened my own companies. I did my own startups when I was in high school. When the idea of what is a growth marketing, what is a startup, what is a VC, what is venture capital, all these kind of things was still very unknown in the industry or in the at my age. Like, I mean, I didn't even know what these words meant and so on, so I had to Google it myself. We didn't have GPT by then, by the way, so it was just Google and all that stuff. So I had an inverse role. So I was an entrepreneur, and then afterwards I decided to work for some scale ups. I worked at Zomato and at Citymapper. Those two companies really taught me a lot about how a big startup, because at the end these companies they decided to acquire my companies there, and I worked very closely with the entrepreneurs there. But afterwards, I think an opportunity came, which was to work for a corporation, lastminute.com. I was actually very scared to accept the job because when they proposed it to me, they were told me, hey, when you come here, you don't have to think about growing users or usage or whatever. You actually have to think about how to make money. You have to actually make money. You have a budgets to hit, and you need to get there. While I was at my company or when I was in Citymapper or in Zomato, was all about, hey, user metrics. How many users do we get? How much traffic are we getting? Are we putting out articles out there for SEO and all that stuff, right? But here in lastminute.com was all about revenue. You grow revenues, revenues pay for salaries, not the users and all those stuff, right? So it was quite a challenge for me at the beginning. But also, I was quite worried in the beginning because while I was working at my own company or Zomato or Citymapper, you knew the kind of effect you could have within the company. You knew that if you did something, you could basically move the company trajectory in some ways, some shape or form. But in a corporation of over 1,000 employees across different offices in Europe, I thought that would be very difficult. But I decided to take the challenge anyway, and I'm quite happy. So very recently, I decided to leave the company, the organization. I was the chief operating officer until end of April. Today I'm out. I'm trying to enjoy my life a bit more before understanding what to do. Maybe I'm thinking of doing something my own, go inverse, go back to the original. All these good. So maybe I will want to go back there. But definitely, I'm glad about all the things that I've learned on lastminute.com, and I'm happy to share more afterwards.
The I think the best part of your story is that you have had experiences that are quite different from each other. So you started with a startup, and then you moved to some scale ups, and then a big company. What would you say? What are the main differences in these three kind of companies in terms of growth and the idea of doing growth marketing inside all of them? Maybe you already told us one, and it's the meaning of the word growth.
Yeah.
In some cases, they mean users growth. In big companies, they mean mostly revenue growth. But apart from that, what are the main differences in doing growth marketing in three different environments?
So I would say one thing that I've noticed is that for my own startups, maybe it's because your own startup, maybe it's because your own money and all that stuff, you always think about how to grow for free.
Mm.
So I would say my specialization was more on the side of finding ways to acquire traffic for free or for using very small amount of money to get there. So SEO was one of the things that I worked on a lot. Finding ways to show up as a first result on Google was something very important, especially for at the time I used to have websites or companies where I needed to have usage, as much usage as possible in order to sell the traffic to advertisers or other companies out there. So that's one thing that I've learned a lot, and that's where I started studying, all this kind of case studies. You would hear a lot about how Hotmail became so big because they put a small link, referral links on their emails and all that stuff. No, so we did that a lot. I learned a lot of that there. When I started working as scale ups instead, I mean, there was part of the, let's find ways to acquire traffic for free. But because these companies were typically had a lot of resources, a lot of venture capital funding, what I've seen is that marketing budget was almost infinite, and you wouldn't even think about optimizing to the nearest cent how to optimize each campaign, the ROI and all this kind of tracking points. So it wasn't, I would say it was more about, hey, let's throw money at the problem. Let's find ways to acquire as much traffic as possible because all we care about is getting as many users as possible. In fact, many scale ups, as you've seen, as you can see, are not profitable, I would say, because all they're doing is they're investing for the future growth of the company there. Then when I joined the corporation like lastminute.com, actually super sophisticated. I've never seen such sophistication in the paid marketing side of the things. Of course, there's always the SEO aspect, there's always the email newsletters and those kind of things. But I would say it's a secondary aspect. It's more about finding ways to ensure that the paid marketing is working in an efficient way and making sure that it's actually profitable channels. And then you will try to segment each of the channels to ensure that each channel is a profitable channel rather than blending it all together. So the difference between a scale up and a corporation is that while the scale ups, they're like, okay, let's do a blended in all blended customer acquisition cost. In a corporation, it would be no, no, no. This specific channel would have its own cost of acquisition cost, cost of acquisition, and all these things, right? So it was a lot more sophisticated on the other side because each euro really counted for the company, basically for the company's bottom line.
Hmm. So it means that there are huge differences in terms of strategies, but also in terms of tactics and the day-to-day work that you do on the growth side.
Yeah. I would say
Uh,
on a corporation, it's I felt like sometimes we were too sophisticated. Sometimes you were really trying to split the hair in half many
hmm.
times. While in a scale up, it will be more, okay, let's do it. Let's try things out and see what sticks around. While in a corporation, everything is a bit more because you have to justify, right? You have to justify to the board, you
Hmm.
have to justify to your CEO why are you spending this money, and then you will look at those numbers every single day and ensuring that it is quite profitable. We're talking about that you're spending hundreds of thousands of euros on a daily basis. So
Hmm.
if you do a mistake, you can see it right away.
And based on that, what's the, let's say, the hardest part of doing growth in a bigger company, apart from have to justify everything you do? But is there any things that you could say it's kind of more difficult in a bigger company instead of a startup or a scale up?
So I'll give you an example, and it's quite an interesting example. So as you know, I come from a startup background, and when I joined lastminute.com, I had to adapt my way of doing things and so on. I have to say I was lucky compared to other people because I knew the founders of the company, I knew the CEO. Although I wasn't directly reporting to the CEO at the time, I did have a direct connection with the CEO and so on, right? So I had more freedom of management or operating aspect within the company, so I could do things that maybe some other people would have had more difficulty to do, so take bets and so on. So one of the things that I've noticed is that for example, while I was working at lastminute.com, one of my responsibilities was to grow the insurance revenue. So how much insurance to sell to the customers, what's the pricing and those things, right? And the first things that came to my mind at the time was that, hey, the best way of understanding how to increase the sales of insurance maybe is we should work on the copywriting, because we had a tool, because we had a back office system, the best way was, hey, maybe, if we talk about different kind of benefits that an insurance policy provides, maybe the customers will decide to buy more rather than saying, hey, you get like, I don't know, 5,000 euro for cancellation reimbursement and stuff. So the idea was, I told the team, hey guys, I think we should come up with different copywriting to do this. The first thing they told me is that, hey, but there is a department that does copywriting. You cannot just randomly start writing copywriting yourself. I'm like, guys, I mean, let's just open the PDF file of the insurance policy. Let's study it. Maybe there are some benefits within the insurance policy, and there are many. Many people don't know that there are, more than whatever we write in the models and so on. Let's come up with that. They were like, okay, good, but are you sure? Because this is not something that we were allowed to do. We're just business people. We're just business analysts. So we are not allowed to change the copy of the product without a copywriting team. So we should go to the CPO, which at the time the copywriting team reporting into, right? And then afterwards, they were like, okay, but we also need to go to the legal team, because whenever you change something on a highly regulated product such as insurance, you need to go to a legal team and you need to get approval. After the legal team has approved whatever copywriting you want to do, you need to send that to the insurance provider, to our supplier as well. And I'm like, okay, but how long does this process take? Because I want to test things out quickly, because I have a budget to hit within this year, and it's already, I don't know, February or March. And if we don't do it right away, we're not going to hit the budget, right? So this whole process was funny because we came up with a good copy. I think at the time, I thought that at the time was a good copy. We sent it to the legal team. It took them, let's say, 3 to 4 weeks, because obviously they're quite busy with other aspects of the business and so on, to come back and say, hey, we made some changes to this copywriting and so on. I think now this is acceptable. We saw, I'm like, okay, it's okay-ish. I would say maybe there's still too much legalese in there and so on. We said, okay, let's send it to our supplier. We sent it to our supplier. After 1 month, they came back and said, okay, no, this is not the right way of doing this. Please go back to the previous thing. So I'm like, okay, I lost 2 months of the time, and we didn't receive anything. Like we didn't get to change much about the copywriting, the original copywriting of the insurance policy. I was like, you know what? Let's make our changes ourselves, right? So let's do something that actually we're not allowed to do. Let's find a small segmentation of the traffic, because the lucky thing that I had when you're in a corporation is that you have a lot of traffic, and you can segment the traffic and start playing with things without getting like caught right away. So I told the guys, hey, let's do the copywriting ourselves. Let's not involve the copywriting teams or the legal teams or whatever and so on. Let's start testing things out. Let's make sure that we're within the rules, the regulatory frameworks and so on. It's not like we're gonna make fake promises or anything. We just think, hey, if we think that this benefit of the insurance policy makes sense, let's promote that. Don't invent new things, don't do anything illegal, whatever, and so on, right? So we started doing this. And then obviously we found like several copywriting aspects of that worked really well. So once we found that, we went to the legal team and then asked the legal team, hey, what do you think about this? Because we tested it already and we saw that, it's very good. What do you think happened?
They said no.
Exactly. Well, they went to the CEO. They started complaining. They did a huge meeting and so on. Hey, why is this small team, the business analyst, the business team is overstepping on other departments? Why is Guk's team working on the copywriting for insurance? That should be done by the copywriting team. Why are these people changing the copywriting of an insurance without first getting approval from the legal team and so on, right? Or why they're doing it without doing it with the suppliers and so on. So that was the kind of complexity that I had to deal with within a huge corporation, where everyone had their own job or specialized in their job. And if you were doing other people's jobs, then of course they would start thinking, hey, you're trying to take away, I don't know, their responsibilities and all that stuff. And I think in a corporation, that is the hardest thing. While when you're in a startup or in a scale up, that is expected. That is something that is expected, that you do that, because there was always this kind of idea, don't ask for permission, ask for forgiveness, right? And I applied that with the corporation, but not always. It's a cultural mantra that many people enjoy or like.
And I mean, I get it. Makes sense. To you have to get approval. The whole process is kind of long and
Yep.
complex and involves so many people. But so, what would you say? What's the solution to that? So, uh, for example, if someone is listening and they work in a big company and they have the same problem or kind of same scenario, same situation, how would you address that? So do you think this means that you have to change the way you do experiments? You have to change, the internal processes of approval. Uh, you have to change teams. How does it work? How do you fix that?
It's very difficult, and I don't think we solved that within the company within lastminute.com. Even when I became the chief operating officer of the company, where I would say I had major controls and major responsibilities there, but you still had to, deal with the other executives within the team and making sure that you're all aligned and so on. And at some point, the higher you go up, the less you want to end up in political battles, and you tend to adapt to the internal rules or the internal processes. If I can give a suggestion to the CEOs in general, I think you need to find the people that are like that. Maybe, the kind of people that don't want to ask for permission, but they want to ask for forgiveness afterwards. And I think you need to cherish them. I think you need to protect them within the organization, because they're the ones that potentially can find an unfair competitiveness, something that other competitors will not do. Because most of the people, most of the companies, typically they want to follow the flow. They don't want to do something big, something crazy, and so on. Because if you think about it, when you're a startup, you have nothing to lose. But when you're a corporation, you have a lot to lose.
Mm,
You have a lot to lose because you have an established company. You have a company with history and so on. You have revenue lines. You have profits and all that stuff, and you don't want to risk that too much. But I think having a small team that is always in an exploration mode, or a small
mm,
team that keeps breaking the status quo of the company, can put an edge to the company, can put most of the people in the organization up to their toes, that they always need to deliver. They need to be on the edge, right? They would be on their edge, because they will think, why is this guy doing my job? Is he doing actually better than me, or in copywriting, or is it better than me coming up with processes and so on, right? So I think you need to cherish them somehow. On the other side, for the person that is actually challenging the status quo and so on, you need to understand that you're taking risks, and you need to be
mm,
sure about that. And you need to be ready that maybe they will not give you forgiveness. Maybe they will just tell you, hey, you're not working out for the organization, right? You need to get out of the organization, and I think you need to be able to accept that. So it's a double sword,
mm.
edged sword. It's not easy to say. I don't think it's an easy problem to solve, but I think the risks are worth it, especially because in such a high competitive world, like the travel industry, for example, you need to find an unfair advantage against your competitors, and the only way to do that is that, like, to
Mm.
find new ways to go in exploration mode.
I love this expression you used a few times today, exploration mode. What do you mean by that? So, what does a team actually do if they are in exploration mode?
So let's take the insurance as an example, right? As an exploration, we think, like, sometimes we all have like a preconception of what works and what doesn't work and so on. But what I've noticed, what I've learned from last minute, my experience there is that whatever I learned in the past does not apply easily into the thing, right? You may think, hey, if you make this button look nicer, if you make this model look nicer, if you have better designers, if you have better UI, UX, whatever, and so on, you can improve the conversion rates. It didn't work that way. I mean, even like I always said, I want beautiful things. I wanted my website to look beautiful. I wanted the app to look beautiful, and so on. But are you actually doing that for the user, or are you doing it for yourself? And I think what I've learned is that actually the reason why I wanted a beautiful website or beautiful app is for myself, not for the user. Because what I've noticed always is that the conversion rate barely moved. It's not because I made something look nicer, the conversion rates become much, much better. Typically, uglier designs or things that we would consider ugly actually work much better than nicer Apple-like looking kind of websites and so on. Also, this is something that I've learned. But when I say go in exploration mode, is that we don't know what we need to do. So we just need to test things out. So the lucky thing that I had, as I mentioned before, is that when you work in a corporation, typically you have an established business. Typically you have an established traffic sources. So people are always coming to you, right? And one of the things that I kept on saying to my team, Guys, we're so lucky here because while I was in startups, every day was a new day, and I had to figure out how to bring in customers to the website or users to the website. Here, if I go sleep, if I don't work tomorrow, if I wouldn't work today, or whatever, and so on. Anyway, we will have tens of thousands of customers coming to our website or to our app, giving us their credit cards, and actually buying something onto our portals. Even if I go away for 1 month, tens of thousands of customers who will always come on a daily basis to do something on our website and buy stuff. And that was the beauty of it, right? And what this means is that you can actually segment the traffic as much as possible, while in a startup it's very difficult to do because the traffic numbers are so low, and in order to get the statistical relevance is very difficult.
Mm.
So I just told the guys there, the business analyst, not even the copywriter is there at the time. So look, I'm going to give you a single KPI every day. I don't care what you do. Just launch a new experiment, get a small segment of traffic, just launch a new copywriting experiment there. You come up with it, just follow the common sense rules. Do not lie to the customers, do not do anything that sounds illegal or whatever, and so on. Just do whatever you think is the best thing, one at a time. Sorry, one a day. And this guy, all he was doing was actually studying a lot of PDF files, so really learning really well the insurance policy there. And it's many pages, like 30, 40 pages. I don't know. I don't think there's any single person out there, any customer out there that buys insurance that have read the whole thing. But we did, just to really learn really well the product that we're selling and so on. No? And we started doing that and so on. And after some time, you would actually start saying, hey, this works better than the other stuff, which we didn't expect that would work. So that's what we started doing, and that was the thing that worked out really well. But in order to do that, unfortunately, sometimes you're going against the internal processes,
Mm.
and that was sometimes the biggest battle that I had personally internally was to actually deal with the internal issues, because people would say, "But why are you doing my job?"
Mm.
And they wouldn't see speed as something very important, while for me speed was everything, to test
Mm.
things out as much as possible. So that's what I mean by exploration. We don't know where we're going, we just need to try things out. Let's not have the preconception that this is going to work better than something else. Let's just try. And typically the best ideas always come from like random discussions that you have, and many times they sound very stupid at the beginning, but those are the best ideas.
Mm.
I cannot make specific examples here, but really the best ideas are like random stuff that happens sometimes, maybe even during the weekend. Someone writes in their Slack channel, whatever, hey, I think this is like a thing. And someone will say, it sounds very stupid. But then you start thinking about it. Actually, that's a smart idea. Let's try it on Monday.
Mm.
And those were the best things that came out.
If you are enjoying this episode, please check out my lead generation course. You can watch it for free on gaito.link/skillshare, GAITO. As an entrepreneur, marketer, or business owner, you know how crucial lead generation is. In this course, I'll be sharing with you 20 proven tactics for lead generation in both B2B and B2C markets. You can watch it for free on gaito.link/skillshare, GAITO. You'll find the link in the description. You were talking about speed, and I also think that there is something important in what you just said. That is, if you want to do, you know, if you want to run experiments, something that is quite important is quantity. I think we don't talk too much about it because maybe quantity is kind of underrated.
Mm.
It sounds cool to talk about quality all the time, but in terms of running experiments, quantity is something quite important. I mean, since it's totally random, you don't know what it's gonna work and what it's not.
Yeah.
The more, the better. Is that right?
So
I
yeah, yeah.
suppose this is also true in a startup, in a scale up.
So when I took over the product organization while I was at lastminute.com, obviously I had also like internal struggles as well to convince. It's not like I would impose certain things to the teams. I think the best way of management is to you try to push people towards a direction without really pushing them, right? So you have to nudge them in a nice ways and so on. So that was the also like a huge difference between like a startup founder and the working in a corporation. Although like you have like I don't know an important job title or whatever, it doesn't matter. You cannot go there and command and control and tell people, hey, Raffaele, do this, do that, and so on, right? You cannot do that. So One of the internal struggles and the debates that I used to have a lot there at the company was personally, and I will tell you, it's maybe not nice to say. I don't really believe in the user research and a lot of like research kind of activities that gets done before, right? Because I kept on telling to the people, "Hey guys, we don't know what's gonna work." Okay, and there is, even that famous quote from Henry Ford that will say, "Hey, if people wanted, they would probably ask for a faster horse rather than an actual car, and so on." So, okay, user research is important to a certain extent, and there were times that I found it very useful, especially in the beginning when you need to learn the industry. But at some point it's just better, just don't know. Like if I ask
Mm.
people, hey, how should we make our website nicer so you convert even more to buy flights, it's not like they're going to give you a very useful answer for that, and so on. So I always told them, for me it's like, I want options. Like I want to be able to tell to the developers and to the teams, let's try to try as many things as possible in a given year so we can see which one sticks. Yes, we could say that it's quite wasteful as a strategy, but many times I've found out that we will spend 3 months or 4 months doing research. Then we try that thing, so it would take another 3 months to develop the MVP. Then you launch it and it doesn't work at all. And there would be like hundreds of people doing analysis and so on, so on, to make sure that we would give to the executive team the kind of information that they need in order to make the proper assessment and proper decisions. But many times there were like 2, 3 instances where we worked on 6 months literally to do analysis and user research and all that stuff, and then another 3, 4 months to actually get the development done and to put it live, and it didn't work out. And I always thought that was like such a huge waste of resources and huge waste of time, because I was thinking just to myself how many hours I had to spend personally to vet through all the data, read through the data, and make it nice enough that it can be presented to our CEO and so on. No, so I think it's always better to find speed. Break things. Just do it. Just try it. What's the worst thing that can happen? You reverse back and you try something new. So I would rather keep doing that rather than trying to have as much data as possible to make sure that things are working out. And many times I believe that it's a cultural issue in many teams, in many organizations, that people don't want to take the responsibility when things go bad.
Mm.
So that's why people are sometimes very obsessed in making sure that they do as much research as possible to get as much evidence as possible to be able to have an alibi, probably,
Mm.
possibly, at the end of the journey saying, hey, but the user data told us all this stuff, but it didn't work out. So it's not my fault, right? It's not my responsibility. So,
Mm.
but instead, what I used to tell my teams, my people, I were like, look, I don't care about your mistakes. I'm actually happy because we know that that is the wrong way. At least we tried it already. We spent very little on that to figure that answer out. Let's move on to the next thing. But I think people have difficulty in that figuring that out. And also, maybe it's possible that some people are more happy about the process rather than the end result. So I've seen there are some people, many organizations where I've seen that people love the process, the idea of doing the user research, the idea of doing all these things all together, working together as a teams and all that stuff. And many times they tend to forget the end result.
Mm.
But one thing that I keep telling to everyone, yes, the process is important, it's interesting and all that stuff. But what's really important is that if the result is not there, we failed, we wasted this amount. So we need to make sure that we try to get there as quickly as possible at the result to see what works, because at the end of the day, that is the one that will either make us successful or not successful.
Mm. Um, I love this idea, and I think I agree with you that there is, if you really want to if you really want to run experiments in a company, uh, you need to work a lot of the culture, the mindset that is important. This is as important as the tools and the strategies and the techniques and everything else. And I see with my clients as well. This is probably the hardest part in some companies. You can give them, the tools. You can tell them about the strategies, and everything else. Explain them funnels and and loops. But if they are kind of worried and scared about failing, it's not gonna work. Just not gonna work. There is a
No,
huge.
but that was the. I'm telling you, like once you become an executive of a corporation, that's what I had to deal
Hmm.
with all the time. Like
Yeah,
just
it's.
changing that cultural mindset is very difficult, but also dealing with your peers and making them accept that, hey, we should allow people to make mistakes. We
Yeah,
should make them
yeah.
people believe that, making those mistakes is not a problem, is not detrimental to their careers as
Mm,
well. I've done so many mistakes at lastminute.com, but I think the reason why I got promoted was because I brought the results at the end of the day.
mm,
And people tend to
mm,
forget the mistakes that you've done in the past just because they look at the results. I mean, if the
mm.
revenue line or whatever line that whatever KPI that you're following in a positive way grows, it means that you're doing a fantastic job.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
the
It's
numbers
part
go
of the
down, then
process. Mm.
yeah,
I think it's part of the process. That's the hard part to understand for many people. That sometimes failure is the only way to growth. I mean, there is no other way. You fail, you
yeah.
learn, and you grow.
But the
Uh,
most important thing is that you do it as quickly as possible. You get to
yeah.
the failure point as quickly as possible. And obviously, what's important is that people understand that they failed and they learn from those mistakes and then apply those lessons
Mm,
to the new experiments that they want to do.
mm. I was thinking last time we saw each other, we met for a coffee. You told me something that I loved it. You said in the whole growth marketing environment there is a lot of cool things that are very cool on theoretical, like on books, but they don't actually work on in real scenarios. So there are many people that they just read books and blog posts that they think they know stuff, and
Yeah,
then when they have to work on it, it actually doesn't work like that. And I strongly agree with you. And also there is a lot of fluff around it. The whole growth marketing scenario. Can you give me a couple of examples, something that you would say you tested in real life? For example, you said before, sometimes ugly websites they work better than the nice ones.
yeah,
Do you have any examples of something that looks cool on theory, but then
yeah.
once you work on it, it's kind of very hard or difficult, or it doesn't work at all?
So I think, like, many, I mean, I've seen some people within with proper job titles, like, I'm the growth person within the organization, I'm this and that and so on. What I've seen is that they tend to read a lot of blog posts. They tend to buy a lot of books about this and so on, and they make the examples like I just made before about, hey, we just need to put a link on the Hotmail in the signature, and then it's done, right? Or if we provide $5 referral link to the people, they will start inviting everyone else within their family and friends or whatever and so on. So I used to hear this kind of things when we were having discussions with the teams, and I'm like, but it's too simplistic. I mean, you've gotten that from one of the, I don't know, LinkedIn profiles, or someone posted something on Twitter and those kind of things. And it really, in my opinion, is too naive sometimes to think that way. And another thing that I've noticed for many people is that, and I mentioned this before, they enjoy the process. They don't enjoy. I don't think they are after really, like, to that idea. I found a treasure, because at the end of the day, the growth marketing is about finding something, exploiting some area that not many people have done already, right? In any marketing channel, at the end of the day, there is like a plateau. You grow very fast, and then at some point it stops working. I mean, you see that with all Facebook campaigns or any campaign, and even in ad copy, at some point it stops plateauing and so on. So many people fail to recognize that they need to find something that others are not doing or the consumers are not used to, so you can really exploit that as much as possible. So many people are stuck to the process and so on. And maybe an example that I can give is the use of A/B testing. So, and I remember this one. I mean, there are a few anecdotes that I can say about A/B testing and so on. So, as you know, as I mentioned before, I love to have a good design, a good looking website. Maybe I'm doing it for myself, maybe I'm doing it for the consumer, but probably maybe it was for myself, looking back and so on, because I wanted to be able to say to my friends like you, hey, look what a beautiful website that we have, a beautiful app that we have, and so on. No? So one of the times that we did an A/B testing was that they did an A/B testing with a new design and an old design. And at the end of the day, the A/B testing showed that actually there were like no differences. Like, everything was 50-50, everything was quite stable. So they let that. And the team afterwards, they told me, no, we kept the old design. We didn't give the old design, the new design and so on. I'm like, but why did you do that? It's because the new design didn't improve so much. I said, but why don't you just use the new design? I mean, if there were no changes, isn't it better to actually have something that looks nicer and all that stuff? No, so that was the first instance. But they were like, no, but the process tells us that if there is no improvement on the new design, we should always keep the old one. So I'm like, guys, but this is the reason why our website looks like that they're from the 90s instead of recent and so on. So that was the kind of answer that I used to receive from the people that I was a bit shocked about that. I mean, I was like, but it's even good that you have a new design that looks much nicer and so on, and there's no impact on the conversion rates and all this on the performance. So you should keep the new design, right? If you have a nicer looking car that consumes exactly the same amount as your previous car that you liked and so on, I would rather have a nicer looking car than an older looking car and so on. And then the other thing was A/B testing itself, because people make it very simplistic. Hey, just put it on optimizely, put it whatever, just do an A/B test and you will get the numbers and so on. But what people fail to realize is that doing A/B testing, I don't know, it's more of an art than a science, because being able to split the traffic equally by 50% is not as easy as it sounds. So for lastminute.com, for example, right? A user that searches from Milan to Bangkok 6 months ahead to a user that is searching from Milan to London for tomorrow, they're completely two different users. So the person that is looking for a flight to go from Milan to London tomorrow, their intention is very high that they probably have to really travel to London tomorrow. The conversion rate for that is probably near 100% or 50%. Let's say 50%. The conversion rate of someone that is looking to go from Milan to Bangkok 6 months ahead is probably just shopping around. So what do? You start segmenting this kind of traffic and so on, or this kind of searches. But when you start segmenting this kind of searches, your audience gets smaller, smaller, and smaller, and you will never hit statistical significance. It's impossible. So we also threw data scientists into the problem. They were trying to find ways to split the traffic correctly and all that stuff. So and then that's where the sophistication comes in. What I was saying, in a corporation, then you really start becoming very
Mm.
sophisticated because you start splitting the hair in half and so on, to the point where sometimes it's so crazy. And this is a trap that I fell in as well, because I would ask our analysts to really deep dive and really understand and so on. But at the end of the day, what I realized is actually, and this is something that many people in the company didn't agree with me, was, hey, let's just do before and after. Who cares about A/B testing? And that was like blasphemy, right? Within the product organization, they're like, "What? What are you doing? Like, you wanted the before and after? That is like so elemental, right? As a thing, we were taught from everyone, everywhere, from all the marketers in the world, that you always need to do A/B testing. Just to before and after, at our level of sophistication, you wanted to just before and after. They all thought that was crazy. But I have to say, like, even today, I still think that sometimes just doing before and after is just the best way to go. And one thing that I've told the guys as well is that when you're doing an A/B testing, or when you're doing an before after and so on, if you don't see an increase of at least double digits, like 10%, anything below is just noise.
Mm.
You were just lucky that during that time maybe there is a weekly seasonality effect or whatever, something has happened. That's why the numbers have gone up. But when they were coming with the A/B testing, where the results show, hey, the B version is better by 1.2%, and you're like, but are you talking about the absolute value, or is it the difference? Yeah, it's just the difference, but that is just noise. Yeah, but good, but we hit statistical significance. We have only already like over 100,000 views on this one, so it's probably like true. Then you would split, like, and then you would like release that 100% of the traffic. And then over time, you will see that actually the whatever performance KPI that you're tracking is quite flat over the years. And another thing is that, hey, when you do the OKRs and so on, you will give to your product teams, hey, you need to improve the conversion rate by 10% by end of the year if you want to get your bonuses and so on. What people don't realize is the conversion rates. It's very tough to improve the conversion rate with an established design, because I found so many ways just by controlling the prices or the markups to move the conversion rates. So all these OKRs, we read so many books about Google doing these OKRs in a beautiful way every 3 months or whatever and so on. so difficult, like so much tax onto the executive teams and the leadership team, the managers and so on, to give all this like target settings to the people. And then many times we will never be able to really understand how to tell to the product people that were working on the, let's say, the checkout conversion rate, if they were doing a fantastic job or not, and if they deserved the bonus or not for hitting their targets. Because many times it was the pricing team or the commercial team that, with their commercial strategies, that were moving around the commercial rate of the product. So it was very difficult to do. So that's
Mm.
why all these books that you read and so on, and then you apply it in real life, it's very difficult to do. And I see that many executives do that as well. I mean, they say, hey, let's just put an OKR. Let's tell the growth marketing guy, hey, they need to do, I don't know, 20% more increase. Not that easy, even to track that and to verify.
What I usually see, especially with young people, as you said, they read books about growth, and from marketing gurus. Probably sometimes the hard part is to understand that the book is not a recipe. You cannot copy paste something that someone said and you do exactly the same thing in your own company. You have to be able to read the room, to understand the context, to kind of adapt
Yeah,
the yes, that's the thing. You have always be able to adapt the framework to the company and not the other way around.
yeah,
And this is not just for growth. I think this is for OKR. This is for agile and scrum, everything you want to try in your company. Sometimes they read the book and they think, oh, this is the recipe, those are the 5 steps we have to do exactly the same in our company, and that's quite impossible. Maybe the hard part is be able to adapt the framework to the company, and make it work.
and that is very hard. That is very
Yeah,
hard.
it is.
It's not as simple as getting an IKEA manual to build the furniture, because every person that reads the manual, they interpret it in a different way.
Hmm.
And while I was at lastminute.com, we were really studying a lot of organizational structures within the company, how to let the product teams and the technology teams work together, what are the ceremonies that they need to have together, how do you involve the marketing team in there, how do you involve the growth team in there, how do you involve the BI teams in there, how do you involve the business teams in there. Super difficult. And then what I really felt like towards the end of my career in lastminute.com was actually I became an organizational architect, because my whole point was how do I make people work together,
Hmm.
teams work together, in order to ensure that the company keeps on growing and they're focused and working on the right thing. It was good lessons, a lot of good
Hmm.
lessons there, definitely.
Well, speaking of lessons, since you have these, as we said before, very different experiences in startup, scale ups, and corporate, what would you say are the biggest thing that you have learned in those years? The best lessons, best takeaways.
Well, that's a difficult one. It feels like an interview question. I don't know.
I don't know.
Well, I mean,
I always love to hear from people. Oh, I did that. That was a huge mistake, but now it's an important lesson. My biggest takeaway, and then it changed the way I do things somehow.
no, I think the biggest takeaway I would say, so I'm very glad that I had this experience at lastminute.com, because here I learned how to be a manager, I learned
Mm,
how to be an executive, I learned how to deal with the different stakeholders within the companies and so on. The first year at lastminute.com, I was very rough. I was very rough. I mean, I did receive a lot of, let's say, some complaints internally as well. Hey, this guy's too rough. This guy's too direct. He's like, he doesn't care about the rules. He just wants to get stuff done and goes forward and so on. No? And I think over the years, maybe it's the age, maybe I became wiser and so on. I became less and so on. What I've learned is that, like, managing people is not about telling them exactly what to do, is make them understand that the idea is theirs.
mm,
And I said that in the beginning of this podcast, is that I shouldn't tell you, hey Rafael, that is the way, go there and do this. I need to like talk to you in a soft manner and so on, and make you believe that the best thing for you is to go there and do those things. So it's like managing without touching. It's like you're managing by just explaining things and so on, but without really like doing that. And that is one of the biggest lessons that I learned, I would say, in a corporation, because in the beginning I would literally say, hey, if you're not able to do that, I will do it yourself, and I will show you
Mm.
that I can do it and that you're not capable. So it was always like some sort of like a challenge that I was giving to my people in an unfortunate way. And this is I recognize that that wasn't the best way of managing people. Yes, it definitely got to the results, because I knew that if I did that, I would get the results and so on. But many times, what I've learned is that it's better to take a step back,
Mm.
teach the people properly without being so pressuring and so on. Because at the end of the day, what you get, and what I was very proud of from my experience at lastminute.com, is that I'm very proud that there are a few tens of people, I would say, within that company now that are very strong managers, that are very strong people that I would definitely, again, in the future work with them, because I know that they can get their stuff done, and they are results driven, and so on. So learning how to manage people is something that I've learned a lot, and I'm very appreciative of the experience that I did with lastminute.com. And I feel sorry for the people that how to help me get there.
Would you say that this particular skill could be useful also in smaller companies like startups or scale ups?
I think yes. I mean, for sure, scale ups for sure. And consider when you're in a scale up, many times the founders would hire. I think many startup founders, they have difficulty hiring corporate people, of course, because it was quite nice, I have to say. Being an executive, you have a lot of benefits. You have a lot of people working for you. You have to do slides. You have a team working on the slides for you, and so on. No, you don't have to do things yourself directly. But the startup founders, they are startup founders. I mean, they're used to doing everything by themselves. If there was something, they had to prepare documentation, they would do it themselves. If they want to open a Jira ticket, they would do it themselves, and so on. So I would say it's something that you need to learn eventually if you want to start scaling up for real. I've seen that happening, like that kind of mistake with my experience myself in my own company. I've seen that happening definitely at some companies like Citymapper and Zomato, where maybe the founders were too much into the details of the things and they
Mm.
couldn't scale up easily. I still see some of my friends that are entrepreneurs, that are CEOs, their companies and so on, that have still difficulty in letting go, in really like telling people exactly what to do and so on, rather than giving them the freedom. Hey, it's okay if they make mistakes, but you need to invest in them. This way they can really allow you to multiply yourself, rather than you being always by yourself trying to tell people exactly what to
Mm.
do. So being a manager and learning how to manage people, I think, is very important.
Mm. We usually, at the end of these podcasts, we always talk a little about books and tools. So let's start with books. Uh, do you have any books that you would like to suggest to my audience? Something that you are reading right now? Something that, I don't know, was a great book in the past? Something that you loved?
So I would definitely say, for the industry, for the people that are working in this industry, the books that I always recommend to everyone, to all my people and so on, is always Inspired and Empowered
Mm.
by Kagan. I forgot his name, but it's yeah, Kagan. And I would say he's probably the best product manager out there, and the kind of book that he wrote is very good. And I believe that growth people, or product people, at the end of the day, product people should be also marketers. And I
Mm.
think product marketing altogether, because growth marketing is like a mix more on the product side than the marketing side. And it's like through product that you find the exploit to market and do product marketing altogether. No, it's a great. Those two books are really great, because it really teaches people to have like an overall view of the company. What he does is that he's trying to teach people, product people, to become CEOs of the company.
Mm.
But I think for a marketer, reading that book and understanding how product people or technology people reason, because let's always remember, marketing is not just about going on Facebook ads or Google AdWords and so on, and running campaigns and so on. You need to learn how to work with the product people and technology people, and understanding how they work, I think, is extremely important. Because I've definitely seen the issue. Like, it's the kind of book that I always told my business people and my marketing people as well to learn how to actually read, because you need to understand how to deal with the stakeholders. And the product and technology people typically are the most important stakeholders within a company, because they're the only ones that make things happen. I mean, you can talk as much as you want, you can create as many slides as you want, But if the technology teams and the product teams don't want to do what you were asking them to do, you will never get to the point. The other books that I'm reading are more like my passions and so on that I'm reading recently. I typically like nonfiction books,
Mm,
and I was reading, for example, the book of the King of Capital. It's about this PE fund, BlackRock. Is the founder of BlackRock, and quite a big fund out there. Another one that was very nice was this book about another PE related thing. It's called the Barbarians at the Gate.
mm,
I forgot the author, but it's like a non-fiction. So for whoever that wants to learn how big companies, like huge companies, like billions of dollars of size of companies, get acquired by these funds, and how the executives fight among themselves, and all the politics that goes through within the boardrooms and so on. I think it's a fascinating read to really understand what's going on the
yeah,
C-suite and at the board level and so on when these
yeah,
things are happening.
yeah. I guess you'll find all the links in the description below. And what about tools? Do you have any tool that you really love that you, I don't know, use on a daily basis that you think are kind of important and you want to share with my audience?
So personally, I use Notion to
Mm,
to keep track of the notes and the things. But corporate wise, like company wise, I think the best tool that provided the most benefit in general for me in terms of collaboration and so on is Slack.
mm,
Slack was not something that lastminute.com was using. It was actually adopted in 2021. Just so you understand, because I was using it with my team, so like just my internal team, but then somehow we managed to, expand it across the whole organization. But for me, Slack, the reason why I find that important is because it democratizes the access to the information. Because
mm,
one of the things that I always notice within big corporations is that people, especially managers, junior ones, they tend to hoard information and they tend to not share that information because information is power. So many people they don't want to share the information that they have with their teams and they keep them on the dark. But I think that is completely wrong because we have all this CPU power, right? Every brain is a CPU power, right? I'm like, okay, let's make sure that we use as much CPU power as possible. Let's feed the information to our people, and they will be the ones coming up with the solutions. Why should I use my own small CPU that I have here when there are thousands of CPU power out there that is probably even much better than mine? So that's why I always think that using a Slack is very important. But of course, you need to train people on how to use it. Many
mm.
people find it distracting. That was the major complaints that I had. But I still think it brings more benefits than non-benefits there. The other thing was that I was quite addicted to Slack. I was a bit crazy maybe. I was replying to every single Slack on the public channel. I tended to comment on every single point, because my work schedule was from 9 to 6. I was almost like working in a call center, especially during COVID times, because I was having a call every single slot on the calendar, and then from 6 to 8 I would have some free time, and then when I'm in front of the TV with my phone, you know replying to every Slack message out there and so on. No? So everyone would like keep seeing, okay, during the day he's quiet, and then in the evening he's like bombarding everyone with his comments and all that stuff. Of course, some people I would say, and agreeably, they didn't like that so much because they felt like, okay, in the public channel there's Guk and he's like looking after my work and my things and so on. Maybe I was overstepping and stuff, but I still think that it provides a lot of benefit to the company, and especially to people. It makes you show that there is no ladder system where
Yeah,
Google needs to be an executive and you're down here, so Google cannot talk to you or whatever. I think it's much better that you try to flatten the organization as much as possible.
yeah, 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 yeah. Good. Before saying bye, where they can follow you? Do you have a website, Twitter, LinkedIn? Any link you want to share with us?
So I was very active on social media, but then I stopped completely because maybe I'm getting old. I don't know, like maybe it's that and so on. So you can follow me on LinkedIn, but I hardly post anything. But yeah, so you can email me. Definitely, you can message me there, and more than happy to have a chat.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time. It was great.
Hey, thank you,
Thank you.
Rafaele. It was great being here.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the podcast. I hope you enjoyed it and you learned something new. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify to stay updated on new episodes. With your support, I can continue to bring great content and great guests to this podcast. So hit the subscribe button now and I'll see you in the next episode.